Hey guys, it's almost an agreement time. Susan Horn's with me. We'll talk to her in a second. I got intro stuff to do. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe, whatever the thing is on those things. You go to our website, almostinagreement.com. I do all the episodes are available there, or you can go to your favorite podcast provider. While you're at your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and subscribe, give us a 5-star review. Tell us we suck, but put a 5-star review on there. That's all that really matters to the algorithm, and that'll help other people be able to find us a little bit easier on the topics that we cover. On the website, almostinagreement.com/cityelections21. We've got a little basic cheat sheet, links to all the different candidates, what district they're running in, as well as links to KGIS and the Knox County Election Commission for more information about where to vote. I don't think it matters if you're registered. If you're not registered, you're screwed already, so don't worry about that part today. But we've been working through school board. We got a lot of fun stuff, exciting things going on in the schools. Maybe fun's not the right word, but Susan Horn's with me. She's District 5, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff going on in District 5. And you know me, I don't really want to talk mass that much, so we won't. But but anyway, it's almost agreement. Susan Horn, everybody. Hello, Susan. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, sure. Glad to have you.
Sorry about the little delay in getting set up there. Generally speaking, I like to be more prepared than that, but, life happens.
It does.
Okay, so, I think we need to get a little bit out in front of it. Not in front of it, we're behind it, but we need to go ahead and do a little bit of mass talk just to get out of the way, because the meeting last week was not an agenda item, but the meeting this week is for the public input portion of it, because that's a weird little technicality that people that are wanting to go to the meetings need to understand, that last week they weren't allowed to talk about masking. This week they are.
Right. So during our work session, our public forum is open to those items that are on the agenda.
Okay.
After our regular session meeting, public forum is open really to any topic. So that's the difference.
Gotcha. Okay. Because again, for me, one of the big things for me on the particulars of the topic, I'm not a big fan of level up overreach kind of deals. I didn't like how Governor Lee did the opt-out thing, and I don't really like that a federal judge is making decisions on what we have to do in our own county. Regardless of the end, it's not about the masking to me. It's why does a federal judge have any input in our day-to-day lives here in Knox County? And so that part's kind of weird to me, especially since state of Tennessee. No, the state can't put anything in place that doesn't involve all counties, but somehow we have one county in Tennessee right now that has a specific mandate on it, which is weird as well. But again, that's all over our heads as far as I get it. And so I'm looking forward to the day where we can move past this and have conversations about future school stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so since we do have an active case right now, I really can't talk much about it other than to say that the attorneys are working through motions for appeals and that kind of thing, and so most recently they've put in one of the things that we're waiting for is just the other exemptions for kids
right.
that need to have their IEPs met and that kind of thing. So we're hoping to hear back from the judge quickly on that.
Right, because I know that there's the judges list originally was only 2 items. And I need to make a correction on the show we did last time. It's not that the plaintiffs involved were the ones that had the affliction. It was just that the doctor that the plaintiffs brought in mentioned those by name, and that's why it was on the judge's list of things to do. So I apologize. I put that out wrong on the big show over the weekend. But yeah, because I don't know. Again, on accident, we were doing the big show this weekend, and my youngest, who's a 3rd grader, wanted to sit in, and so we spent the first 20 minutes with him talking about this weird week he had at school last week. And so I understand, I truly understand the logical exemption list and most of why the 60 different things are on there. But I find it fascinating when you can hear a kid's parents talk out of the kid's mouth. Because mine was talking about one of his buddies who I think the quote was, "Masks are hell." It's a 3rd grader. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you don't care, man. I know you don't care. I understand. And what's funny is my 3rd grader, his analysis of it was, it wasn't a big deal last year. It just took us a little while to get used to it. So we're in that phase again. We only had 1 week, so we're taking a while to get used to it again. And that was kind of his analysis of it, which was, impressive. I make geniuses apparently. And so again, I don't want to stick on it too long. I just think it's a weird thing to have such a strong division on. And I'm of the camp that I think we have a couple hundred left. Left and right. Sorry, not the right word. I think we have a couple hundred really angry, I don't want to put masks on my kids. I think we have a couple hundred really angry, you have to have masks or my kids are going to die. And then you have the other 58,000 parents out there just like, well, I don't know. well, it's not that big a deal. Let's go forward and do other stuff. And so that's the camp I'm in personally, and that's why I don't really care to talk about masks anymore. So, what's the future? Where do we go from here? Are you in an election year?
I am not in an election year.
Cool. So we're stuck with you. So we got to deal with it.
You're stuck with me. Yep.
Sweet.
3 more years.
All right. So then you came in last year. So you came in.
No, actually, this is my 5th year. So 2016 was my first year.
But you were elected again last year.
Correct.
Because it's a 4-year term and it's 2 year. It's a 2-term max.
No, there's not actually.
It's an unlimited term max. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
See, these are the parts that I like because I'm trying to figure out that I didn't pay attention to these things and I don't know them, and I'm trying to figure out what bodies elect when and then the weird cycles of things. So, you're finishing your first year of your second term.
Correct.
Okay. So I don't know, like I like the idea of the institutional knowledge that you now have since you've been there for a while, as far as how the gears actually work. And again, one of the things that I personally am stressing on trying to understand and make sure I'm understanding correctly is Knox County Schools are a state body that we have a local oversight on particulars. Is that a good way to word that?
That's probably a pretty good way to word it.
Like I've been jokingly call it's Tennessee State Schools, Knox County Branch.
Okay.
Like that's been my more joke version of it.
Fairly accurate, I suppose.
Because I think that's one of the confusions that a lot of us parents have is, again, not to make the mask thing back as part of the topic, but I quote, not me, but I have an issue with this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Who do I talk to?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of it is a lot of the stuff that's going on that is the most controversial in topic is stuff that the state is putting upon us, and that the school board is just working with the rules that they have. And I think that's an important distinction that I didn't know that until a couple years ago when I started a couple weeks ago probably really, but until I started digging into this for the show's sake, I didn't know that was how it worked. I thought it was a school body, because when the lawsuit came out for the mask thing, Mayor Jacobs was in there, and I was like, why is Mayor Jacobs in there? It's like, well, because they're suing everybody in Knox County. It's like, man, the school board's not really Knox County. And so these things I think are confusing to a lot of people.
So they are. And so I think if you think about it, the state legislature passes laws. Those laws go to the Tennessee Board of Education. They pass policy. Then the Tennessee Department of Education then takes those policies that the state board has passed. They do their part, and then they send their guidance to us. So we're mandated by state law, but it also goes through these other entities before it gets to the local level.
Okay, so then then where is the latitude that the school board actually has? Like this is what I'm still confused on. What is the breadth of actual school board control of what's going on? Because it following that guideline now or that down, it's like is how much can school board do on specific curriculum?
So curriculum is really set by the state. So we have Tennessee standards, the Tennessee curriculum, and all that's on the Tennessee state website. So there's not a lot of leeway for the local bodies.
Okay, and but inside curriculum are some of the different paths and how we get to the finish, or is it like you cannot say the word purple in schools because the state of Tennessee says you can't say purple in schools?
No, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's down to that level. So a teacher would have a set of science standards, and they have to hit the things that are included in those standards, but it's going to be up to them how to do it. We just adopted a new reading series for elementary, and so it's directly tied to the Tennessee state standards, but I'm told, and I hope this is the case, that teachers will still have latitude to be able to use the curriculum in a way that's going to help their class, because they're the expert in the classroom for their specific class and what those students need.
Right, because again, my very basic understanding of what's going on, I feel like that's probably one of the most, I guess it's an assumption on my part at least, but I think that's the thing that concerns me the most is the lack of flexibility within the system, because I think we have a problem, and I have it as a parent, and kind of given this it's a third grader. Doesn't matter where they're from, what their family situation is, what their actual brain makeup is, their genetics, all the different things that goes into an 8 or 9 year old. There's a lot of stuff there, and they're never the same. Like I've made the joke, it's like, there is no median. There, like if it's a scale of 1 to 50 on what a third grader is, there are no 50s. It just averages to 50 because there's hundreds and ones and everything in between. And so how the flexibility comes in there, that's my concern, is I think as we get into the state body, it takes away more of that flexibility, whether it's from the school board or the school itself, or even the individual teachers in the classroom.
It really does, because reason being, there are state standards for how much time is spent on each subject in the school, in the classroom. So if a teacher realizes that that her students or his students needs extra time in social studies, they may not have that time because they also have to have a certain amount of math time and a certain amount of reading time. So there are definitely those guardrails that are put into place at the state level that do limit what teachers can do in the classroom, and that's frustrating for a lot of teachers, I think.
Right. I know. I mean, it's frustrating for me to hear it because it's just, again, it to me. I think that I've suffered from the idea that they were the same for so long, and that my vision of what school was for me, because I probably am closer to a 50 in that thing. School was just kind of there for me. I didn't put a lot of effort in, and I made it through okay, kind of deal. And so, like, not being able to empathize with the idea that there were other kids that I was actually friends with that I didn't realize really struggled in certain things or really excelled at certain things and didn't get a chance to really flourish in that thing because they're the same as me as the other kid, and that's the way the system has to deal with them.
So a classroom teacher especially at the elementary age, has a lot to deal with in one classroom. We also do have RTI, response to intervention, for kids that need help in reading. So those kids that test in a way that shows that they need extra help, it's mandated by law that they get extra reading help for their reading level.
Right.
And then we have on the other end of the spectrum, which really falls under the same law, but we also have, a gifted and talented program. So kids that need additional help can get additional enrichment in that way. Our coaches work with classroom teachers a lot to make sure that classroom teachers are able to differentiate in their classroom so that the students that need to be pushed a little more can be, and they're pushing them within the confines of the whole classroom.
Right.
And so that's definitely a challenge for teachers and for instructional coaches to be able to structure those lessons in such a way that the kids that need to really be pushed are pushed, and the kids that need a little help are extended the opportunity to be able to understand it with the rest of their classmates.
Because this brings me around to like one of my universal questions that I'm starting to apply more correctly, because I talked to Eddie Manis last week and I put it on him because he is part of the state education board or committee in the House or whatever. Is, do we have a written illustration, and I don't know, I always say it like, do we have a picture of what we want a Tennessee graduate to look like? Not just in test scores or GPA, but like, what do we want them to be able to do? And the Tennessee ready, I think, is the phrase that I've been hearing around. But I guess maybe start, like, could you explain more of what TN ready is?
So it's really making sure that if a student wants to go to college, that they have at least a 21 on the ACT, so that's an indicator that they will do well in college. It may there's about 5 different things, I think, that fall under that TN ready, or ready graduate headline. So ACT score is one of them. A CTE or certification is another one. So we have several high schools that kids can actually come out of high school with a certification at several of our high schools and several different programs. It may be military, that's one. The other one is AP/IB classes. And
what's IB? I'm sorry.
IB is International Baccalaureate.
Okay.
They have it at West High School, and so a lot of the high schools really have kind of a different personality based on the high school. So Farragut High School focuses a lot on AP classes, whereas West focuses on IB. Hardin Valley, since it's so close to Pellissippi, they have a really high concentration of students who do dual enrollment.
Right.
So we have a lot of those programs in place. The other thing that's happening in Knox County schools right now that we're really just at the beginning of is to work with Ford Next Generation to really look at the CTE piece, the career and technical education.
So this is my dumbness. This is the Ford, like Ford Motor Company. Ford.
Correct.
Okay.
It is.
Because I've heard the phrase a couple times, and like, that's kind of one of my running jokes. Is I'm dumb enough to ask the question that's obvious, and so that was my assumption every time I heard it. But
you're not the only one that would have that question, I'm sure.
And so it's.
So they are helping. Basically, we're in a process that they've gathered a lot of feedback from our community, from school board members, from principals, from teachers, from students, from business leaders, from manufacturing in the area, different viewpoints. So they are putting all of that together, and we're going to be working with them on a way to structure our middle schools and our high schools to make sure that we are in line with what the business community needs.
Right.
So we don't need to be, having a great CTE program for something that there's absolutely no job opportunities for students after high school.
Right.
So it's just going to kind of align all of that. And it's really, this is the one conversation I think that school board members have been able to have over the last several months that's been really exciting, away from the mask topic and
right.
into something that we can really feel passionate about, because we definitely recognize that not every student will end up going to college. That's not the path for every student. And so
the U.S. average is like 40-something%. It's under 50%. I know that much.
It's definitely under 50%. So, that's a lot of students that we want to make sure that we are really preparing even from middle school on. And a lot of this is not even trying to figure out what they like to do in these CTE classes. Sometimes it's about figuring out what they don't like. They
right.
may go into a class thinking, oh, I really think I want to go into the health science area.
I took electronics at Bearden when I was there,
mm-hmm.
and first year I loved it. So it's just like, this is cool. Took it again. And second year they actually brought KUB in, and they had a training safety video,
mm-hmm.
and they showed an electrocuted guy. I was like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it for me. I don't want to.
But that's great, because then you can mark that off your list
right.
and move on to the next thing.
And so, yeah. Well, but I mean, how many jobs are out there? Well, I don't want to die, so I don't want to do that job. That cuts a few out of the the market. But yeah, and I think it's I truly think if I'm not doing the show, I'm not hearing about this. Like I didn't hear. I think the first I heard of it was a couple weeks ago with Virginia, maybe. I don't remember who I was talking to that brought it up first to me as far as that. Because again, I think one of the problems I have is, I feel like the bureaucracy of the system, again, mm-hmm. that inflexibility that is built into the way we do this, it adjusts way too slowly to the way how quickly the world is adjusting around us. Because manufacturing really isn't a thing we do around here much anymore, unless you want to build guns, and you can go down to Maryville and build mm-hmm. some guns here pretty soon, which is pretty exciting. Don't get me wrong. It is, yes. Or driving trucks for Amazon, which apparently is one of the worst jobs on the planet. But we'll see how that goes when it gets here. But again, manufacturing is not a thing, and so I know HVAC's always a big one. Some of the
mm-hmm.
the trades in general are a big
right.
one that got what's the word I'm looking for here? Got stigmatized for a long time, as that's what the stupid people do. That was my high school experience. Was nobody does that. You don't want to do that. You go to college. That's what you're supposed to do. And luckily enough, I was able to, and I didn't have to take on a bunch of debt for it, so I'm not mad at it. But that was the world then, and I hear the conversation a lot about we're pushing this way, but it's how long has the need been there for the system to catch up, and how long does it take? Okay, we're adjusting what the schools are doing with middle schoolers, so we're 4 or 5 years down the road before we're pushing people out into the industry. What's the industry doing in the gap? How are those of us that need the services that the companies don't have the people to do surviving in the gap? And so I'm a big fan of this, the idea of pushing that direction. Again, my concern being how slowly the gears turn to get us there.
Mm-hmm. Because I think we are doing some of it, but obviously we need to be further down the road than we are. But we're I can tell you that we're headed in the right direction. We have great programs at a lot of our schools already that are helping kids get right into the workforce, and kids are coming out of Fulton High School, for instance. They have a great CNA program. So nursing.
But they just took the hospital out.
They did.
It would have been much easier when they could walk across the street and
Absolutely.
get some practice in. That's where both our kids were born there, so that's the only reason I'm really bummed about that one.
Yeah.
That was the baby hospital in town.
Okay. So, and the other thing too that I in speaking about things that people don't know about our school system, one of the things that we do, I wasn't on the Joint Education Committee this past year, but I was the prior year. The Joint Education Committee is 4 school board members and 4 of our commissioners, and we sit down usually quarterly. And really it's just kind of a touch base and a way to really educate some of the commissioners on more school board topics. One of the things that we looked at last year, our finance team, and I know you know Ron McPherson, so Ron and his
I won't say I
team.
know Ron McPherson, but yes,
You know who I'm talking about when I say Ron.
I do. More than WVLT and some of the other news people around here. Oh, stop! Sorry.
So they put together a great presentation that looked at the top 5 school systems in in the state of Tennessee. And we talk about the top 4. We talk about Shelby County, Nashville, Hamilton County, Knox County, and then the 5th one that really their population is really growing is Rutherford County. So they pulled in Rutherford County.
Where's Rutherford?
It's near
Tri-Cities?
no, it's actually near the Nashville area.
Okay.
It's somewhere in the middle area.
Okay.
So they did a comparison in a lot of different ways to see how our school system stacks up to other large districts.
I got the per pupil expenditure page, and I was really mad at it.
Yes. Well, because we basically we spend less money than any of those other large districts.
Right.
But the positive thing is we are getting better results than any of those districts.
Right.
Our ACT score, I think it was in 2019, was 21.1. The only school district in Tennessee that had a higher ACT score was Williamson County, and their median income is literally more than double ours.
Right.
So when you're looking at apples to apples, Rutherford County is actually very close to ours in median income. It's a little bit higher, but they were a little less than we were for ACT.
Right, because I remember asking Ron about it, going, why aren't we doing like a Lexington or something like that? So, because different states do different rules and stuff like that, because that'd be one that I'm curious about as well, is other more apples to apples in the sense of same size-ish, like Chattanooga's close to us and stuff like that. But because again, like the financing thing is the most confusing, ridiculous thing on the planet to me. I don't understand it, and the sad thing is that I would argue that I understand it more than most people do.
Right.
And I still don't understand it. And like I understand a little bit of a leveling the playing field kind of thing, using the wealthier counties to help out with some of the less wealthy counties and stuff like that. But the idea that of the major 5 counties, we spend the least per pupil on average, and 40-something% of our total budget is locally funded. I would assume that those other counties operate similarly, except they're probably more like 50+% is locally funded. And it's like, well, what do we do? Like, how does, like, I can't for the life of me work this out in my head.
Yeah, so
She brought notes, people.
I did. I always go back and do my homework, make sure I remember these numbers correctly. So we're spending a little over 50% at the local level. So, there are states in Tennessee that 75% of their funding comes from the state.
Right.
So there are huge discrepancies. A couple years ago, I know I heard.
Well, the only thing that makes, sorry to interrupt, but the only thing that makes sense on that is there are counties in state that are getting more per pupil from the state than what the state's average number is, for lack of a better word, because we're getting under that.
Right.
Like, my assumption is, and I don't know this for a fact, I haven't got it quoted, but my assumption is the state number is around 10. So they give us 75, and they're pulling that extra 25 and putting it around in other counties to get them closer to 10, because we're at like 10-ish per kid here.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they're moving the money around, in which, there's a whole separate side of it where I'm like, well, how is it more expensive to educate kids in a rural county than a local one? I can understand transportation being a little more expensive. You don't have as many buildings. You got to get further away and stuff like that. But it doesn't make sense to me why a Roane County school, like a Roane County school system, would be more expensive per pupil than a Knox County system. Doesn't, I mean.
Well, and it all goes back to, of course, as you know, it's a very complicated formula and system. So it goes back to Knox County's ability to pay. Our fiscal capacity is larger than those rural counties. So that's working against us.
Right.
So, basically, I know a couple years ago,
the best I've heard it is we're a donor county.
Yeah, we are. So we have about 6% of the state's kids. This stat is a couple years old.
Yeah, Ron told me this, and I like this one a lot.
But we have 4.5% of the state's budget.
Right.
So that's well over $30 million a year that is going to some other other counties. So, that's a challenge, because when you look at the issues that we have specifically with the BEP, we don't have enough school nurses in the BEP. We don't have enough mental health professionals. We don't have enough school counselors. All of that adds up to several $1 million. If we had that 30 million, we could.
Right. And you take the state wants to do a 4% increase for all the teachers. well, that state's really only doing a 2.5% increase
Right.
for our teachers, and
Right.
we have to make that other 1.5%, or our teachers book it over to Roane County because they can get paid more with less students and X, Y, and Z. And which again, like that's another one of those, as we expand as it's expanded into a state system, that flexibility, that ability to do things that the local gets weirded out by this financial
Right.
game. And I guess to me, and this is one that I know there's it's a complicated question, is how much should it cost to take a 5 or 6 year old from kindergarten? Right now, we may get universal pre-K here next year, but from right now, we're looking at a 5 to 6 to 18, so 12, 13 years. How much should it cost to get a little mushy child and turn it into at least a T and ready, or a ready grad, or whatever the word was? I apologize again. How much should it cost to do that and work backwards? Again, this is just trying to be logical about it. I want to make it make sense, because like I always, whenever I'm arguing tax stuff, as much as I don't like paying taxes, I can get on board with paying taxes if I can see what it's for.
Right.
And I think the school system is the most glaring example of I can't see what's going on.
Let me tell you this, because this is helpful to think about. So more than 85% of our budget, the general purpose budget for the schools, goes to staff. So it goes to salary and benefits. So more than 85% of our budget. So you really can see where a lot of it goes, because it's in the school. You know, it's the staff that's in the schools.
Well, because it's certainly not the buildings. Oh, they're more jokes. I gotta keep them coming. But again, like, is that a question that has been asked? Is that a conversation that has been had? Is like, obviously there's inflationary in the 12, 13 year period and stuff like that. But, if we were just to take, just one kid that's demographically the same and each year and add it together, is that a reasonable number for 13 years of mushy baby to functional adults, harder
Yeah,
quotes?
definitely see your question. I don't think that it's really looked at that way.
Because I think that makes, I don't know, again, this is my logic on it, but it makes more sense to me to work that backwards, because then you could say, this is what it costs, this is why it costs that. I mean, obviously there's loss and waste in the system. Books are a big issue to me. I don't like the whole book thing and how much books cost and that kind of stuff for supply side of stuff. But like, to me, like one of the things that frustrates me most is when people say the more money argument. We need more money in the schools so the schools can do better. Obviously, it's not an apples, or it's not an A equals B kind of thing, because it's not necessarily true. But yes, it's not going to hurt theoretically. But I don't like the argument because it doesn't give me anything specifically to talk about.
It's too general. I mean, so if you go to, I represent the West Knox County schools. So if you go to some of the Farragut schools, if you ask those principals what they need, they're not going to say, I need more money. They're going to say, I need more staff. I need more staff. And because of course, they have the largest teacher to student ratio in those schools. So they would like to have more staff. Well, more staff equals more money. So, but if you tell somebody, these 4 schools need, 50 more staff members, and that is whatever the number is. That makes more sense than just we need more money. So
$2.25 million, give or take.
Yeah, roughly. That sounds about right. So we as a school board, we are trying to speak in those terms more often. So every time we go into the budget cycle, that's what we're asking Ron to give us. Okay, tell us if we need $30 million, break it down. What do we need the $30 million to do? And then we also want to know, okay, what else do we need to do that we're probably not going to be able to do? But what would be on your wish list?
Right.
If we could go to $60 million, what would that other $30 million be?
Right.
So that we're not just saying we need more money in schools. That's not a valid argument at all.
Right. Because I remember, because I just think it's funny. It's like the school budget is whatever it's allowed to get away with being, because the formula kicks out what it kicks out. So the formula kicks out $600 million. It's a $600 million budget this year. We'll make it fit. It's kind of the game we play. Because again, too, before we move on, because one of the things that I was thinking about too, that I think would be a useful thing to see both as a board member and as a parent, would be an actual breakdown through line items on a per pupil as well as a per resident. So that, again, when the conversation comes up is we need $30 million more in the schools, well, do the math. That's, $20 a year per resident, whatever the math is, kind of thing, because it makes it a little bit more palatable when I can see as a resident what it's going to cost us instead of that big number, because that big number is too hard for most people's brains to really think about. And so that was a thought that I had that I think would be a helpful thing to see, is to say, me and my neighbors each all pitch in 20 more bucks. This is what we're going to see as a result.
Which we had a school board workshop last week or the week before, and so maybe Ron took your suggestion.
I'm going to claim credit
we
for
had
it.
a different. I'll show it to you. I brought it so you can see it. We have a different viewpoint of that, where he is looking more of kind of an individual student, what it costs to educate, where those dollars went by classification over the past couple of years. But yeah, I mean,
You're welcome, Ron.
I was looking at, for instance, every time we're advocating for additional dollars in the BEP, we always go to school nurses, school counselors, social workers, that kind of thing. And
I think we need we need to get a couple better lawyers on so we can start suing the state for more of our money back. That's also my pitch for
some
school
counties
board.
have done that. If we had if the BEP included what we need for school nurses, that's another $3.6 million. If they included what we need for school counselors, that's another $11.5 million. Social workers, that would be another $16 million.
All right, I'm going to back up. Keep the sheet out, because I want to because as you're saying this, I'm understanding what you're saying, which means most people probably don't.
So you mean to explain it a little bit?
Well, I'm not explaining. I mean, I'll explain it as I understand it. Is what the reality is here when we're asking for nurses,
right?
And nurses. how much more nurses?
So the BEP, the current in the formula for BEP,
right?
It funds one nurse for every 4,500 students.
Right.
So think about that. So we've got,
I mean, most years kids are fine, whatever. This year's a little different.
So we have 4,500 kids. I mean, that's West Valley, that's A.L. Lots.
Right, I don't know how you do it with more than one school. Right.
Added together, So
logically, it should
impossible.
be at least one per school.
Right.
That would be the smart way.
We think it should be, which is what the Academy of School Nurses thinks, is one for every 750 kids. So that makes a lot more sense. Then you've got two at some large schools, but
right.
You at least have most schools covered. So the difference, that gap, in a lot of cases, Knox County is paying 100% of those salaries.
Right.
So we have a lot of areas that we are paying above what the BEP funds. And so rather than Knox County getting 45% of those salaries, we're paying 100% of those salaries.
Right. But the point to the Knox County, I guess the clarification that I'm trying to hammer down here is to the Knox County residents, you're already theoretically paying for this twice. If we do it on our own, we're paying for it twice. Where if it comes out of the state like it should, like the BEP should be kicking out to us, it's already in. You're already paying it in sales tax, theoretically.
Theoretically, well, yeah. I mean, we're paying sales tax here. It goes to Nashville, and then it comes right back here.
Right, but I'm just saying, in the sales tax that we generate and send there, and it comes back as the percentage that they pay out in the BEP for XYZ. And then we are paying it again in property tax and some of our local portion of the sales tax to make up for the numbers that we're talking about. See, this is what I'm talking about.
You're going to have
exactly.
to ask Ron and make sure you're saying that correctly.
No, because you said it. Knox County makes up 52% of the total school budget, so 300 something or 260 something million or whatever that is. The state pays the other 200 and something million or whatever. But so in your day-to-day out there living your life, buying groceries, going to the store, doing whatever, that sales tax revenue gets generated. It all goes to the state. 2.25% comes back to Knox County. 5% stays in the state. The state, for school's sake, sends a couple bucks back, and then we take out of that property tax and or sales tax local portion and pay the 50+% that we're paying locally.
Right. So the part that's coming back from the state is part of that 5%
that went that way.
Right.
Which I can't understand this budget, so why would I try to understand that one? But the state budget, it's like, what are we spending all that money on? But never mind. That's a whole other animal to detangle or whatever you want to call it. Because again, that's the thing to me that is becoming very on my top 10 list of frustrating things is. What is the purpose of the complication? Like, is there a need for it to be this complicated, or is it just
that's a good question.
It got moved this way over the years. I mean, Tennessee's 225 years old, 26 years old now, whatever. and it just gets piled on and piled on and piled on, and all of a sudden it's this complicated, and somehow idiots like me decide to figure it out, and I can't. And the handful of people that can figure it out are the ones that get to go do and work inside the system, and then it's hard for me and you and other parents to keep an eye on that person because I don't know what they're doing. I can't understand what they're doing, and so I'm hoping they're doing the right thing, but there's no oversight when 10 people in the state actually understand how to maneuver inside.
No, it's
this
a great question. I mean, I think it's a great question. A lot of times we do things just because that's the way it's done, but that doesn't always mean it's the right thing to do or the right way to go about it.
And because I think that is a tome for my life. Excuse me, I had to pause this for a second.